All right, Legal Podcast is back in the Thursday Night Law and Sporter. Cofield, Adam, Judge Dan, and Justin Watkins from Battleborn Injury Lawyers. Lot to get into. Maybe a wild card topic a little later on the NCAA and what's going on with NIL and all the other stuff. But we've got a loaded show tonight. Adam, I wanted you to start out because obviously a hot topic today was LeBron James and his deleted tweet and all of those shows that capitalize on grieving white men. Led by Doc Travis, who said it was like one of the worst things he'd ever seen. And Clay Travis actually said during his show today that LeBron is dividing the country. Like Clay Travis, okay. So anyway, this is all around LeBron being really emotional and pissed off about the 15-year-old who was shot in Columbus, Ohio. But there was a lot more to the story. So fire away.
I should unmute first. That'd probably be the right thing to do. What's up, everybody? I do want to confirm more than 10 people in America died from coronavirus, right? Because that was a guarantee from Clay Travis, and I thought he wasn't going to talk anymore if more than 10 people died. The guarantee that it was going to happen. Okay, I just want to make sure that he's still around, even though that guarantee took place and more than 10 people did die. I get what, listen, what LeBron's tweet was irresponsible. I think that's fair to say. I don't think we know anywhere near enough of what was going on with the situation. But LeBron also didn't kill anybody. Like let's put into perspective, a tweet that's irresponsible and probably uninformed and definitely too early isn't going to kill anyone. And it's not helpful to the dialogue, it's not helpful to the conversation, and it probably shouldn't happen. But let's also thank you, Brady. Let's also, put in some perspective of what it was. Like, there's anger, there's frustration, and you get all that. Tweet shouldn't have happened, but let's not blame LeBron for society's ills when, there's a lot worse things that are going on. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened. I think you're muted.
I'm here. Did you guys see the initial tweet, Dan or Justin? And then the fact that it got deleted, and then he explained, hey, I got emotional.
Yeah, I saw it. I'm going to slightly disagree with Adam here. I mean, you can't use your platform in order to create change and then be irresponsible about it and not take blame for what the ramifications for that could be. So I think it's bigger deal than just, well, I was uninformed and my bad, but I'm not dividing anybody, because when you use that platform in that manner and you jump the gun on stuff and you don't have all the facts and you start pointing fingers, you get other people to do the same thing. So I think it's certainly in the category of irresponsible for him to do it that way.
Justin, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's irresponsible. It was wrong. It's not helpful to the dialogue. In fact, I think it sets the dialogue back in a lot of ways. It gives people something to put blame on, all those things. He's not killing anybody. He's not out there shooting anyone. There are worse things that happen in the world than what LeBron did, and there's worse things that drive us apart than what LeBron did. It's like, in the grand scheme of things, yeah, it's bad, and it's not helpful to anybody. It's a irresponsible thing to do.
I just don't like that argument. I just don't like that argument because I think words matter. And, for 4 years while Donald Trump was in office, we talked about how much words matter, and he didn't kill anybody either, and, there's a lot of worse people doing a lot worse things. And
I would disagree that Trump didn't kill anybody.
I would also disagree that Trump didn't kill people.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? He didn't do any, I tend to believe that, I'm saying I don't agree with that argument that because somebody didn't directly kill somebody we should allow their irresponsible words to slide. That's my point. Is I didn't give Trump a slide for 4 years, and I don't think LeBron deserves a benefit of the doubt here. I don't. It was a dumb, irresponsible tweet that I think could have ramifications beyond just his tweet. And I do think it's dividing. I think it's a divisive tweet that was unnecessary, and he needs to be responsible for it. And just like I held Donald Trump responsible or tried to hold him responsible for his words for 4 years.
I'm fine with everything that you said. I'm fine with having, I don't know what the consequences should be necessarily for LeBron, but like yes, he needs to be more responsible when he has a voice like he has, when he has a platform that he has. He needs to be responsible. I'm completely with all that. I think it's funny that somebody like Clay Travis would make a comment like this. It's hilarious.
I think Clay Travis is in a way worse category than I'm putting LeBron.
Sure.
Sure. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm not. I'm not agreeing with the Messenger's platform either. Sure. But I think I've got to. Regardless of political affiliation, regardless of whether or not I agree with most of what somebody says, if I'm saying words matter, then they matter for everybody.
I have no problem with that. I think all those things. Like I said, I started out saying it was irresponsible and very, very rash of him to do that, and then way reacting before the facts are known. All those things, very true. And whatever I don't know what consequences you get for sending an irresponsible tweet and a tweet that's not helpful and all those things. Like, do you lose your voice going forward? I don't know what the ramifications are. All those things are true. I do think it's rich for the people that are actually making a big deal about this to be saying it the way that they're saying it. So it's pretty funny.
I know Dan has to somewhat avoid this topic, but
well, no, I mean, I don't have to avoid the topic of. I think it is important that you check your sources when you post things online. You don't go off half-cocked, no matter which side of the issue you're on. That stuff I don't have to avoid. And it's not difficult to say you aren't advancing, you aren't helping the cause when you aren't careful. That, I don't care what side of the issue you are on, that doesn't help. And when you have a platform like LeBron's, you really should be careful. And if you want to affect change, you really should be careful. That's not to say shut up and dribble. Nobody's saying that, but you really have to be careful. And from what I saw, just to say, well, you're next and things like that, get the facts and comment responsibly, because a lot of people are taking it seriously. And a lot of people, if you don't like it, Adam, you're right. You have to know that the people on the extreme fringe, like Clay Travis on the other side, they're going to try and use your words against you. Don't let them. Don't give them the ammunition. Be careful, both sides. It drives me crazy when people just in general post things. Did you look? Did you think for a second, maybe this doesn't sound right? Whether it's about any sort of topic, source your material before you post it. Does this pass the smell test in general about things on the internet? That funny meme about Abraham Lincoln, it's on the internet, whatever it is, must be true, Abe Lincoln and the internet type thing. Like, do your, check things out before you post on the internet. And LeBron, everything he says, he has a huge platform. He really should be very responsible, because things are magnified, and he has to, what's the Spider-Man quote? Great responsibility with great what becomes great responsibility. With great power comes great responsibility. He knows that.
Yeah, and I would say, like, legally speaking, I mean, I don't know if his tweet sparked any anger or threats directed at the police officer, but if they did, then he could be in the crosshairs legally. LeBron could, if this guy feels like he's forced to quit or goes through some, something serious. Now, the causation element there to prove up that it was LeBron's tweet that led to the threats is difficult. We had a lot of that in the Capitol riot with President Trump, because they were specifically using President Trump's words and quotes and using his name. That was a little bit easier. So unless the threats kind of said, as LeBron instructed me, I'm coming after you, which is, I think, a pretty unlikely on this scenario. But if the cop is getting a bunch of threats and has to, go into some sort of protection for his family and him, could he potentially go after people who jumped the gun and incited, potential violence and threats against him? I think that he could. It's a difficult causal link to make, but it's not impossible.
While we're on this, we have a bunch of other things to get into, and I think some things that are related to this. But while we're on this, I just throw this question out there. Believe me, I'm not scared. It's not something I'm worried about. There is somebody that definitely goes after me on Twitter like all the time, and it reminded me when you just said this. And yesterday, during like an argument on Twitter, he basically was like, "Hey, I know where you live. Don't maybe come say hello." It wasn't a threat, but it was one of those things where I was like, "Dude, like what? Like what is that?" Is there any would somebody have to do something about that, or is like some vague comment like that on Twitter a thing?
No. That is a crime if there's a threat to bodily harm. There's usually two elements, and I can't remember the other one. One is threat to bodily harm, and I can't remember what the other one is. But yeah, that's a crime. I think we discussed this on air a couple weeks ago when somebody. It was the guy who was betting games. Right. And he was sending threats on Twitter, on DMs to the players who had not performed the way he thought that they would perform. And he lost his bet, and he made threats of bodily harm, and it's a federal crime. And he was charged with it and is going to prison for it. It's absolutely a crime. You're not, just because you're on Twitter or Instagram or any of those things does not mean you're free to just say whatever the hell you want.
Dan, have you experienced many cases of social media? And I know it's a new world, even though it's kind of old now. But there's like a lot of things that aren't really laws, right? Like we're still trying to figure these things out a little bit.
Yeah, no, it's a whole kind of new world. I mean, the interesting things. Well, a lot of it is related to kind of this new, election thing. There's a guy here in Colorado. Actually, I thumped him really, really good in a trial an arbitration trial last year. He's now being sued by Dominion in the voting thing. He made some statements on Twitter saying that the president or one of the executives from Dominion was on a call, some conspiracy call, saying he was going to rig the election. So these are all driven by defamation suits now. Which historically, most lawyers, Justin maybe feels differently. Most of the time people, you get it all the time, right, Justin? I want to sue for defamation. And most of the time we kind of roll our eyes like, it's always kind of problematic for your general reasons. But here it's a really hefty sword that Dominion Voting Systems is using. And there's a guy here in Colorado that, on Twitter, he has this right-wing law. He's trying to carve out a niche, and he just seemingly made up this false phone call and is blasting it all over social media. And Dominion Voting Systems is like, nope, 1.3 billion. I think they're suing everybody for 1.3 billion dollars in damages. Giuliani, you get 1.3 billion. Trump campaign, you get 1.3 billion. And this guy here that I just smoked like a year or two ago, he has no money. He's getting 1.3 billion in a lawsuit. So it's a new area, but you can certainly be held accountable if you're running your mouth out there on Twitter, absolutely, or social media. You can be, depending on what it is, you absolutely can be held accountable.
So I guess a little bit of that ties into another thing I wanted to talk about that we had out there. Have either of you watched the Q documentary on HBO? Nope. It's phenomenal. I know Steve was very into it. I started to watch it one night, not knowing it was 6 parts and 6 hours long, and I made it all the way through in one sitting till 7 in the morning. It was crazy, but essentially, it's exploring the origins of QAnon and the phenomenon that took place and everything that went on. And near the end, there is basically they zero in on a guy who it could have been. Like okay, we think it's him. And then the guy essentially admits it without admitting it. And he kind of gets caught in a trap and admits that it was him the whole time. But I just heard an interview with the documentarian, and he was talking about how, well, I've been told through an intermediary, like, he doesn't want to actually, like, admit it because he's scared that he could be on the hook for a lot of the stuff that went on with the Capitol and just a lot of the craziness that has happened. Would that be possible? Like, if somebody is playing a game on the internet, which essentially is what this guy was doing, he thought, and playing a game that becomes some major thing that then leads to this craziness, how liable could that person be for what they thought was just kind of a silly game? And all of a sudden there's people dead.
So I don't know anything about QAnon, right? Other than it's like a group of people that get themselves all, stirred up and they have this,
Sure.
they have this ability to exchange their messages in some corner of, dark corner of the internet, right? And that's what this guy created, I guess.
Well, it's one person. He was basically telling him, hey, listen, I'm an insider. Like, I'm in the administration. These things are going to happen. We're going to arrest, all these politicians. There's all these people that are running this, all these child molestation rings and all this stuff that's going on. Yeah, Tom Hanks was like, all these people are part of it. And he's like, and listen, the inauguration, it was all leading to the inauguration day was going to be basically, hey, we're going to get all these people together and then arrest them for all the child pornography they've been spreading and all the child molestation they've been doing. And then, so they were all there to be like, all right, we're going to see these people brought to justice. And then all of a sudden it didn't happen. And then the whole, like, everything else happened after, like, the whole craziness, but it was just some dude playing games, posting messages online in the end. And now he's like, oh, fuck, people are dead. Like, this is not really what I intended by this, but I really can't come out and say I did this because I've now turned this all loose. So, like, could we lead to the causation? I guess if you don't know the background of it, it's kind of tough to say.
Right.
But if you're kind of just playing a game online and you're throwing things out there and it ends up leading to people's death, how much, liability could you have?
Yeah. I mean, I'll maybe defer a little bit to Dan on this, but to me, the question would be about foreseeability about your actions, whether or not you can foresee that what you're doing could lead to violence against others. Now, if he's like sort of created this environment, this community by starting some of these crazy conspiracy theories, but as to the Capitol riots, he wasn't specifically coming up with the plans. He wasn't specifically saying we're going to meet here, we're going to meet there. He just kind of was the catalyst for the discussion forum in the first place. Then I don't think they would get there. But if he was specifically involved in the discussions, in the incitement that had to do with the lies that got people all worked up to go to the Capitol, then I think it's a smart move for him not to admit it, right? But if the FBI is interested, I'm sure they have enough to already to prove it, right? I mean, I don't know how protected he was about like his VPN and all that different stuff, or if they could locate him. It seems like if HBO figured it out, I'm sure the FBI could.
Well, Dan, you have something?
Well, yeah. Which, by the way, is Steve producing? Because I'm a little weird.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's like in my house. Like, he's popping up all over the place. I'm a little weirded out. But if he's producing, great. Like, for all these years, great. Steve's my producer now. That's awesome. Yeah, no, the short answer is yes. He lawyer up and shut up. This guy needs to just keep his mouth shut. Criminally, I wouldn't be as worried about, the being charged for the incitement of the riots, but civilly, yeah, there's all sorts of stuff they could be throwing at him, and everybody, he should be worried about Tony Busby. But no, I would say just zip it, lawyer up, and go run away. Hide, go back to the dark corners of the internet, and don't ever do that again. Reminds me of like the dumb teenager in War Games, Matthew Broderick. But no, oops is not a defense. It's man, it's not like he just, the way you were describing it, Adam, was like, oh no, I accidentally did this. No, this went on, and it was like, oh, I opened Pandora's box and it got out of control. Like he fed this a long way.
And not to get too into the details. I know some people are going to watch it. I don't want to give too much away, but he essentially runs a website where all of this stuff was hosted. And so all these people had to go to this website to get the information. So he essentially was keeping it going because he was running the website and he thought it was good for the website to keep doing this. It wasn't about like the political stuff necessarily. It was more like, hey, all these people are coming to see what I'm writing. I'm going to keep doing this and keep this company alive, which is a whole thing. It's a whole thing to watch. But sorry to ask more hypotheticals on top of hypotheticals. But
he should shut up and lawyer up and shut up.
He was living and running his business out of I think it was the Philippines. It was somewhere over there that he was doing this. Does that change liability? Like if you're in a foreign country, could you just be like, hey, listen, I'm just over here doing my thing. I don't know what's going on in the U.S. anyway.
I think it depends on the extradition rights of that country and whether or not that they would send people back. But I mean, if you're in the right kind of country, then the answer is yes, it does matter big time. Like you might not be responsible in any way.
But long arm jurisdiction for civilly, I would think, he would certainly have some splaining to do. But I mean, but this guy, isn't he American?
He's American, but he was living over there and running the business over there. He had an apartment in Japan and then one in the Philippines, I believe.
Yeah, that's an interesting question about the long arm statute, because if like the hosting is actually there and he's physically there, and so technically everybody who's visiting the website is going there, then he hasn't made contacts with the world. I don't know how the minimum contacts work with hosting a website, and the fact that anywhere in the world it could be reached technically, even though it's hosted somewhere else. But based on my old, downloading music days of the .ru, the Napster, and getting music from .ru, I'm gonna say hosting matters.
I did want to go. I wanted to go back to the police shooting that LeBron was tweeting about real quick. Not to get into the details on that, because we also have the video. I don't think anybody knows exactly what was going on there yet. But I did have a hypothetical that I think we've discussed before, and I think it's good from a legal perspective to just say this. So if you see the video, we see a police officer pull up. A girl is going after another girl with a knife. The officer shoots the girl with the knife. We don't know the details of what happened. Was she attacked first and she was going back? I don't know. So I don't want to get into that part. But I think, Justin, we've talked about this, and I want to get Dan into this also. If you're a regular citizen and you pull up on a situation that's fucking crazy, like there's fighting, there's people running, there's somebody kicking somebody, you see somebody attacking somebody with a knife, you're like, I got to do something here. And you shoot the person with the knife thinking, hey, I just saved the day. I'm a hero. I saved the day. That girl's going to get stabbed. And it turns out, again, I'm not saying this is what happened here, but it turns out what you encountered was somebody who'd been attacked, fighting back, trying to save themselves and acting in self-defense. Like, are you now in trouble because you shot the wrong person? You know what I'm saying? We have talked about this.
Well, it depends. Technically, the self-defense statute is if you reasonably believe that you are acting in defense of yourself or others, if you believe they reasonably believe and they're in bodily harm, then you can make that argument. Now, what is the prosecutor going to believe? The prosecutor believe are they going to buy that story? Yes or no? Do they think you were just I guess we have a good example of that. Was it Ahmaud Barbary? Isn't that the case with the jogger?
Sure.
Isn't that their defense? Hey, we thought he meant the description of a fleeing bank, not bank robber, but robber.
Right.
So we jumped out and he fought us, and we defended as a good patriotic Americans. We defended America, I guess. Right? Is that going to work with the jury? I doubt it. Now, Adam, the scenario that you're painting is a little more wholesome. If it really went the way you're saying, well, I guess they have a better argument that, it was an honest to goodness mistake. Technically, under the statute, I would think they would have a better shot at it.
So I haven't read the statute. And
when I say
Ohio.
statute, I mean, when I say statute,
right.
I mean, in general when we think of statutes, the self-defense.
No. Yeah, I'm with you. I remember, and you have more experience with this than Dan than I do, so I'll defer to you on this. I remember this in law school as saying somebody else can accept your self-defense rights, but if you don't actually have those self-defense rights, and somebody who comes to your defense in that situation, if you didn't have the self-defense rights, neither do they. So in Adam's scenario, the alleged victim, or the real victim, who's now being attacked, that was attacking the other person in self-defense, that gets shot by somebody else, the person who shot them does not have the right to defend the original attacker, and their belief that the original attacker was not the original attacker does not matter, because you can only defend to the extent that somebody else actually have those self-defense rights. It's only transferable from somebody who actually has the right to defend. But that's like 15 years ago, 18 years ago in law school. Does that ring any bells with you, Dan?
I'm gonna have to go to the last episode of Seinfeld then and look at the Good Samaritan law for the tiebreaker, just to be sure on this one. I'm not sure.
There's not really good Samaritan laws, are there?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, so they vary from state to state, but so Good Samaritan laws generally are going to say this, that Good Samaritans they're okay legally, you can do it, but if you're going to choose to be a Good Samaritan, you can't perform the Good Samaritan duties in a negligent manner. If you do, you're responsible.
So to go back to one of those other comments, and without the last one that was up about, so it was something about, so in order to prevent getting prosecuted, just mind your own business. Really? That is advice I give all the time. I mean, I had a client that got 50 years old, disabled, had a concealed carry permit, never been in trouble in his life, got run over. He was on foot, got run over by drug dealers, and fired his, was in shock, fired, still got prosecuted. We have one notion in our mind that, that we were taught as kids, and this is America, and we have the right to bear arms, and we have the right to defend ourselves. And the way it actually goes down in the justice system, depending on where you're at, is a whole different thing. So that is not necessarily bad advice. Minding your own business, and whether you want to have guns or not, that's your own business. But that's a reason why, they say, what's that stat? You're X amount more likely, something bad is going to happen to you with a gun than you being the hero and saving the day with a gun. Yeah. A lot of times that's the case. And this scenario you're talking about, maybe that's, the same thing, but not that I'm trying to preach here or whatever, but a lot of things happen that, we have this idealistic notion. A lot of times that's not what happens in practice.
Mm-hmm. I think you take the old mall cop credo: observe and report, right? Like, be there, be a good witness, call the cops, be there to help them determine what actually happened. Now, I mean, I could see scenarios in which every one of us would all jump in, right? Like an adult beating up on a kid. Like there's never going to be a scenario in which I'm just going to watch that happen. Even if the kid was mouthing off, like I'm not like, it doesn't, there's no situation in which that's okay. And then it gets tricky when you start talking about like a man beating up on a woman. Most people want to get in there and try to say something, but you don't know if you walked into it, you don't know what happened before that. But yeah, it's very difficult. But I certainly, if you walk into a situation as a regular citizen and there's calamity, I think what Dan's saying is really good advice. I would just say, like, try to be a good observer and witness for the police and contact the police so that you can be helpful in their investigation, because they're walking into a situation with even less knowledge than what you had when you walked in, and you can help out.
I saw the comment from Brady. Is this somewhat similar? He said, my wife's an ER provider. We saw a bad wreck, made sure they were alive, and just, all right, we're out. We walked like, okay, they're fine, they're stable, they're good, we're out. We don't want any, culpability or responsibility. Is it kind of along the same lines of like, all you could do, like maybe you have somebody, but maybe you also do something where somebody accuses you of something or says something to you, or you can put yourself in a bad position by just being there.
Well, this is like that scenario of like you see somebody in a wreck, you think the car's going to blow up, you grab them, you drag them out of the car, and it turns out like now they're paralyzed because they needed to be immobilized, and you dragged them out. Are you going to be held civilly responsible? Yeah, probably you are, unless the car did actually catch fire, and then they'll be like, "Oh, you did the right thing, even though they're paralyzed. At least they're not dead, right?" Like it's so like results based as to what's and the DA matters and all the facts matter, like of course, and civilly the attorneys are going to matter and the jury matters and all of that. But yeah, you can make the situation worse if you try to render aid and you don't know what you're doing and you make it worse. Yes, you can be held responsible for that.
So the bad reflection on society thing, for sure, I suppose. So what you're saying though is if you think a car is going to blow up and you drag somebody out to help them, and the car doesn't blow up, then set it on fire.
Yeah, no.
That's what I got from that.
Oh god.
Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. Said, hey, look, the car said, I don't know how the car set on fire, but it did. So I'm okay here. I'm protected. Justin told me that. No, I don't think that was actually what you were talking about. A lot of topics locally here, Dan. You may not know about the story of Zayon Collins. But did you want to go somewhere else? Over here?
No, go where you want.
Okay.
I had heard about it. You guys had talked about that on the podcast before, and I saw it on the rundown. Man, you guys are behind in the times. You must have just recently legalized marijuana or something.
Yeah. You guys are experienced with this and pros at this.
Well, you guys, with your strict moral code in Las Vegas, apparently, are just now getting into figuring out how to test for a DUI, marijuana DUI.
Apparently so. A lot of layers to this. So just to fill people in that don't know, Zayon Collins, one of the top recruits in the nation, definitely the top recruit UNLV's landed in a long time, was in a automobile accident that did result in the death of the other driver. We have been following the case, of course, very closely because Collins will no longer be, for now, going to UNLV and playing there, and a lot of a lot of damage has been done to the program. Not anywhere close to obviously what has happened to the person's life who died, and even to Zayon Collins' life, which obviously changed very much that day. He has some. Justin, I think it's fair to say very, very good lawyers.
The best.
They have been doing a great job. I know that people are upset about it and angry about it. That his lawyers are, essentially what it looks like on the verge of getting a very, very favorable outcome for this young man. But now there is,
Well, can I stop you there? Stop you there? Because we kind of had the same thing here with Melvin Gordon. And it looks like they're kind of on the same track here. Melvin Gordon's a running back for the Broncos. And I don't think we got the full story. We got a little bit of it where the cop was coercing Melvin Gordon. And by the way, they lost body camera footage too, like 20 minutes of body camera footage. And we had some people saying, oh, he got off on a technicality on this DUI. And, cops, behaving badly, in a situation. And, kind of like, you're saying, well, this is just good lawyering. This is necessary work. This is a necessary part of the system. From what I'm understanding, where you guys are at is where we were, I don't know, 10 or 12 years ago in Colorado, which is the way, THC is, goes through. Just because it's in your bloodstream does not mean you're impaired. And you guys need to figure out in Nevada what that means. You can't just have anybody that's pulled over get a DUI just because, we tested him, he had THC in his bloodstream. Your Honor, he's guilty. So this is necessary. And it's the facts in this case are tragic or whatever. And I don't want to downplay that, but let's not slam lawyers for doing important work that needs to be done in Nevada, whatever it is. That's just all I wanted to stop and say. Because I don't like it when it's like, oh, these lawyers are doing this. because everybody benefits from this when this work gets done, which, like I said, I was a little surprised that this is where you were. And that was the first thought that went to my head was, oh, you guys, this is new to you guys. You guys probably, however, I don't know how Las Vegas hadn't legalized marijuana before, but apparently this must be new to you guys. But no, it's important that you guys need to figure out how your system is going to deal with these types of scenarios now that you have this in, your system now. So it's important.
So, yeah, Dan. So just to give a little indication, what they had, we do have a law in the books that specifies what amount of metabolite in your bloodstream qualifies for DUI for marijuana, and passed the bill 4 years ago. And the amount is, and I don't understand this stuff because I don't do criminal, but it's for marijuana, it's Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol, right? 2, and then for marijuana metabolite, it's 5 nanograms per milliliter. So there is a law in the book that says these are the amounts. Now, what this lawyer is challenging, and he has quite a bit of science behind him, and it was just a matter of time before this got challenged, is we cannot reliably say that those amounts indicate that a person is impaired just because it's in their system, because these metabolites can build over time. So a frequent user, a daily user, can always be above these levels, even though at the moment they aren't impaired. And so now, as this case is moving forward, the Nevada legislature actually has a bill that's being presented in the assembly. It's actually, I think it's already voted out of the assembly, that takes that out. It takes out any measurables and just puts it into the category that and says you can't be impaired and drive with marijuana. And so where does that leave us? I guess you do a field sobriety test. I don't know. You're going to have to come up with ways to show that they're impaired other than a blood test. Now here, they have some of that evidence, right? The police is saying his eyes were bloodshot. He was having trouble communicating. He seemed sort of out of it, to which the defense said is, yeah, he was just in a major accident and hit his head and he had a concussion. And you're sitting there questioning him. He can't respond appropriately. And that's not evidence of impairment. That's actually evidence of post-concussion syndrome or a concussion going on. So that's their response to this. And then lastly, what they're going at to try to throw out the whole thing is, and for reference, they did a grand jury on this. The grand jury did not indict on the DUI charge because the medical examiner for Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department admitted that based on this measure, you cannot determine how long ago the marijuana was taken. It does. That's not how the science works. It doesn't. If you have this many metabolites, it doesn't mean we know that you took it 2 hours ago. He admitted that. The grand jury didn't indict on that, but they did indict on a reckless driving charge because Zion Collins was going 88 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour speed zone. The way the accident appears to happen, now that we have some footage, is that the decedent, the person who was killed in the accident, makes a turn in front of Zion Collins, and a witness at the scene says that the person who was killed did not see the car coming. And so, yes, Zion Collins may have been driving recklessly at 88 miles an hour, but was that the cause of the death? So is it reckless driving causing bodily harm, or was the decedent the cause of his own death? And that's what they're arguing, is that the decedent caused his own death, and therefore you can't move forward with any of these charges.
So, I mean, I guess I would assume that it's a question for the jury, but like, is there a level where like there's no question anymore? Like, is there a legal level of saying if you're going 130, like, yeah, I misjudged my turn in front of you. If you're going 130 and a 35, I couldn't gauge how far that was. Like if you're going 88, like, yeah, he might have turned in front of you, but like the 88 is what caused me to turn in front of you because I couldn't judge that distance when I was making the turn. I thought you were way further away. Like, is there a limit? Is there a law that says, you know, where that line is, or is that just a question for the jury?
Well, it would be charged differently. They wouldn't charge them with reckless, right? They would charge them with, I don't know, vehicular manslaughter, right?
Okay.
I mean, are you asking from a civil perspective or for?
I mean, I guess from a criminal perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. They would probably charge him with, vehicular manslaughter or something, whatever the appropriate charge would be. He would be charged differently.
That's what they did. They did reckless driving resulting in death, which is a felony and requires. Yeah. So the defense is saying it wasn't the cause of the death. His speeding, his reckless driving wasn't the cause of the death. It was the other person making a turn in front of him that caused the death. So what Adam is saying is, who makes the call on who's responsible for that collision? The person who's speeding, or the person who turns in front? My perspective is it depends. If there is an opportunity for the person who turns to observe for a decent amount of road length that person is speeding before they go in front, then I think it's the person who turns in front. If it's kind of a curved road and there's no way you can anticipate somebody's going to go 130 miles an hour around the bend, you can't see them, you can't anticipate anything, then I'm going to say it's the 130 mile an hour driver. But you don't get just turn because somebody's speeding. Well, they're speeding, they're being reckless, I'm going. Like, you can't, not that this guy did that. I'm sure he didn't.
Right.
And is there anything in the, in fact, there was a case like this with, trying to think, there was a wide receiver that had a small amount of alcohol in his system but there was a guy going to work down in Florida that kind of jumped, unfortunately jumped from his car. But to answer your question, Adam,
was that the Dante Stallworth case?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's who it was. But is there something in the jury instructions that might, point to the jury as to how they might rule, or, is there an element in the charges itself that would point you in the right direction? Like this, for example, in the Chauvin case, was it a substantial factor? Will that point the jury on how they would have to, make that decision? There's certain ways that might be cues to the jury as to the finder of fact, if we're a bench trial or whatever, that would cue whoever's making that decision as to how they might rule.
Yeah, and I'd say, like, as a matter of practice, we see this civilly all the time, where there's an accident that happens, one person's in front, the other person's speeding, and it's like a question of who's ultimately responsible. And the jury ultimately goes to the jury, right? And the jury can put percentages on who they think is at fault. And in Nevada, if the person who's suing is found to be 50%, any amount over 50% at fault, they recover nothing. So whoever is most responsible. Now, if they are found to be 20% at fault, what that means in Nevada is whatever the award is reduced by 20%. So we have a mechanism that allows the jury to make that call. Now, ultimately, what happens with Zion Collins is, I don't know that a judge can make that call for the jury on that reckless charge. I don't know. We'll see. I don't anticipate that. I do anticipate a dismissal on the DUI charge. I do. I mean, by the medical expert for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department admitting that doesn't tell them in time, I think you're going to get there on that. But it's a question of fact for the jury to make a determination of who caused the death. And I just don't see a judge taking that out of their hands.
Justin, I know, and I think Steve has a clip. I think he's here because I saw him wave at somebody. Hey, there he is. I know that you were interested in the Robin Lehner speech yesterday. Robin Lehner, of course, the goaltender for the Golden Knights. For those that don't follow, he has had a very, very public battle with depression, with mental health. Been very outspoken about it. Actually has cost him a lot of money. Teams were very hesitant to sign him to a long-term contract because they were concerned about his situation. and now he's kind of settled in. He got a long-term deal with the Knights, probably not as much as he deserved to get. It took a little bit less money, I think, to take a long-term deal. But he took it because he wanted. I remember talking to him the day he came to the Knights, and sitting in the locker room with him, and him saying, like, I just want to be somewhere where I can be comfortable, where I can understand that this is where I live, and I could settle in and find myself, a place to be, welcomed and comfortable, and where I can be, work on my happiness essentially. And then COVID hits. And I mean, it's so unfortunate that he finally found that kind of peace, and then all of a sudden now he can't associate with anybody, he can't talk to anybody, he can't be out in public really at all. And he yesterday just decided like this was the time to speak out and be like, this sucks. And his essential issue is, hey, we understand that we had to go through a lot of these protocols just to play and figure it out, but we were promised, and I don't know who promised him this because we asked to follow up last night and nobody wanted to answer the questions, but he says we were promised once we're vaccinated, like we're back to normal, and they haven't seen any movement in that regard, and that's kind of what triggered him to go into the speech. So that's kind of the background of where he was, but I think there's a lot of questions, even some legal questions maybe coming out of what he said. So I think Steve has a clip of Robin Leonard speaking.
Some point we got to start looking at the mental health of people around us, not just NHL, but everyone in society, and see how can we start getting back to normalcy, because the problem is going to be huge. But being lied to us about things changing to kind of force us to take the vaccine, unacceptable. And to now when we have taken the vaccine to have the excuse of saying, nah, we're not changing because of competitive advantage. It's outrageous.
So I know, Justin, you'd want to talk about this. First, I guess, what was your first reaction to when Robin Leonard was speaking yesterday?
Well, I know that everybody's focusing on the promised and lied to, and whether or not it was actually promised or lied to. And I think it's just unfortunate that his underlying message has completely been lost into whether or not or who promised what and whether or not they were lied to. And his central message is this: the NHL did not dispute that his take on, we're considering it, but competitive balance needs to be maintained. And if we loosen the restrictions for those who are vaccinated, but don't for those who are not, it provides a competitive imbalance, and we can't have that. And his central theme is, that is crazy. Look at all the different things that have happened competitively, where you're making teams play without players. We got Vancouver on the shelf for 3 weeks, all of that. He cited a bunch of different examples, and he's saying, the NHL has to take account for the fact that we're dealing with people with mental health issues. And yes, I'm the only one who will speak out about it. I'm the public face of it, but I'm not the only one. And I've taken the torch here to speak on everybody's behalf. And I'm super sympathetic to his plight. I watched the reaction on Twitter, and everybody's like, hey, you're making millions, shut up, And for people who
to be fair, he said that.
Yeah.
Like he said it during, like, don't come at him like he does, like you're saying something he doesn't know during the speech. And I know it was very long and not everybody watched the whole thing, but he goes, listen, we're millionaires. We're getting a lot of money to do this. I understand that, but we are still human beings too. And on some level, like you do have to understand that we're people. We have lives, we have kids, we have families. Like we are living, breathing humans. So we go through some of the same things, even though we get paid a lot of money to play a game.
Yeah, and his point after that too is you could have the money and the house and all of that, but when you have mental health, addiction problems, and you don't have my point is what's lost there, and he doesn't have the outlet for that, right? Everybody's like, well, you want to go party with your buddies. It's like, I don't think that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is that when you have these mental health issues, when you're dealing with addiction and recovery, it's the community together that brings about, a change in your perspective and demeanor, and brings more healthy attitudes and levelness to your thoughts. And when I can't meet with my community, when I can't go to a meeting or to a sober house or whatever he does to to work on himself through that community, when he can't do those things, there's real ramifications that he feels. And I think that was like all lost in, the NHL basically saying we never promised that. And so basically he's lying. And now it's like, who's telling the truth? But the underlying thing is still there, which is that these athletes are absolutely going to be, and a lot of people are going to be suffering from mental health issues, but the restrictions that are on the athlete are way more severe than they are on us in the public. If you've got mental health issues in the public right now, you can go to a meeting or a sober house, or, you can go seek help. They can't. Yeah. They're not allowed to.
And you mentioned you don't get to go party with your friends. Like, he specifically said while he was speaking, he was like, listen, sometimes when you're on the road, maybe just going to dinner with a teammate helps. Like, you can go to dinner. You can go out to dinner, sit down, have a meal, and just talk to your teammate instead of just being locked in your hotel room all day. Like, maybe that would help. And maybe if they loosen those restrictions and say, okay, when you're on the road, you and another vaccinated teammate can go to dinner together. Like, maybe that helps somewhere along the way. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was trying to go crazy about it. Dan, has there been much talk about the Robin Lehner situation in Denver?
Well, there hasn't been talk about him specifically, but I can tell you, I mean, the Avalanche have been deeply affected by COVID. They're on their second round of missed games. I can tell you, I've been floored by, like, obviously Grubauer, just got it. They've had 3 players now that got it. They just had to suspend games again. I've been floored by the lack of, I couldn't believe it. I was like, how are they not all vaccinated now? Yeah. Like, how is this a thing? Like, the league should have just been, it's like Dana White has an island, and whenever, Adam, you were getting tested, the NFL, even when as a nation testing was completely short in supply, leagues were getting their tested. Players are getting tested above and beyond everybody else in the nation. I have a hard time believing that people couldn't, the entire NHL couldn't have been vaccinated a long time ago. And I was arguing with my buddy Dave. He's like, well, that would have been in violation of, Colorado law. That would have been in the right tier. I'm like, they're on planes all, did you see 60 Minutes? You had people flying in from Europe, flying into Palm Beach on private jets, getting vaccinated and popping out. I find it very hard to believe that the NHL could not have found a way to have everyone vaccinated over a weekend or something. And I know it's still not as easy as, he would have liked to, okay, let's get vaccinated and everything's gone tomorrow. It's not that easy. And I think we're all like ready. Yes, let's all get vaccinated. And then, I keep saying, well, President Biden said by July 4th, yay. Hopefully that's true. We still need to, stay strong for a little while longer. It's not going to be everybody gets vaccinated and tomorrow they can do everything. But yes, I'm sympathetic with him. And I really cannot believe that there's not more of a central strategy. And I don't know where they stand now. I think all the Avs have been vaccinated now, but the league, man, how long has the vaccine been out? 2 months? Like, how is, especially if until you guys have said it, I didn't realize that they were under that type of, restrictions still. Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, and I think part of it is they said at the beginning that they didn't want to jump the line. They didn't want to, get a bunch of vaccines when nobody else could do it. Although, like, now we are at a point where, like, everybody's eligible, so now do it. I thought there was also something with, like, the Canadian government wasn't going to let the Canadian teams do it. So, like, the rest of the American teams,
the United States, how are you going to stop them?
Well, no, but if
and
they're
the
all
Canadians have their own division. There's no competitive imbalance when no American teams playing any Canadian teams. Like,
that's true.
Yeah, I was super sympathetic to Leonard's plight on this. I agree with it. I don't care what he was told and whether he was lied to or not. I'm with Dan here. It's like, how did they not have a strategy about this? Like, fuck, man. We're talking about, every other league has gotten there. And I'll tell you, on the good news, at least in Clark County, Dan, is they just released their plan. So the state has now said May 1st, we're going to relinquish control of how to respond to the local communities. So the counties get to make up their plans. Clark County's plan, which has the endorsement of the health district, starting May 1st, is 3-foot social distancing and 80% capacity. And the rule is restrictions drop once 60% of the Clark County is vaccinated. So there's actually an enticement there, and they think that will be done before June 1st on the current trajectory. So we're like, hey man, if you're on this, I'm just asking everybody, man, if you're on the fence, please go get vaccinated so we can hit this 60% and get back to some normalcy.
Justin, I know you said you didn't really care about the promise part. I'm obsessed with the promise part, of course. Is there, I mean, would that be a binding thing if they promised players, hey, if you want to get out of this, get vaccinated? And then
why would it be on the players though? What? That's a bunk promise anyway. Hey, go get vaccinated. You're the employer. Arrange it. If you want them to be vaccinated, set up a vaccination program.
Sure.
Didn't you say you did that, Justin? Didn't you incentivize it for your own little law office in Las Vegas?
Yeah, I didn't even get everybody to do it either, but
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference here, Dan, is right. It's collectively bargained, right? And so I don't know. Maybe there's a ton of players who don't want to get the vaccine. I don't know where their membership stands and whether or not they push back on it. But clearly, Leonard believes 85% of the Golden Knights have gotten it, and that there was discussions about it to hit that 85% number, and that at least under his belief, they hit that number. And so, they want some restrictions lifted. And let's just talk way broad scale, public policy. Like, let's set good policy. I don't know how you can, when there is some apprehension about getting vaccinations, I don't know how you can promote vaccinations when you tell them nothing changes. Go get vaccinated, everybody. Well, I'm not so sure. Well, I mean, you really should, because nothing's going to change if you do. Like, you got to give them an incentive and say that things are going to change. Things are going to get better if enough people do this, and then people will do it. And Leonard is basically saying that's what they told us. If enough people do this, things are going to change. I didn't want to do it. I just got off a concussion, but I did it based on that, and then it didn't fucking happen. And the only reason they're giving me, when I made a call to the PA's office and the NHL, was it's a competitive imbalance, and I think that's bullshit. And I agree with them.
Is there a difference between telling them things will change and promising things will change? Is there a legal difference?
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. Well, I'm not sure of anything. I can foresee a scenario in which the NHL told the Players Association, "Hey, if we get to 85%, we'll take a look at this," and that the Players Association told the players, like, "Hey guys, we're going to hit 85%, and we're going to get these things dropped." Right? Like, in that translation of the message of the negotiation table between a few people from the PA and the NHL, and how that message gets transmitted down to the players, that a statement turns into a promise, turns into a guarantee. Can I see that? I can see that. I don't know. I mean, I guess technically, if we'd have to find out what Leonard was told and by whom.
Well,
because
I would assume that, isn't there some sort of prohibition on the leagues? Isn't there something in their CBA that would prevent the league suing individual players?
I'm sure that there is too, but casting that aside, I mean, if somebody at the NHL said that to Leonard, but that somebody didn't have authority at the bargaining table, and that's the line, that's the division we're making, then no fucking chance. He's saying the NHL told me, and that person works for the NHL. Now, if it's the PA telling Leonard what he believed, and then Leonard says it, the bottom line is he has to know what he said was false. So it wouldn't be him responsible, it would be the person who told him incorrectly.
Yeah, it's also a second language, which I think is important to point out. Of there could have been a conversation where they said, "Hey, nothing's going to change until you go get vaccinated," and he took that as a promise, and that was not really a promise. It was just a, "Hey, you need to do this." I'm just saying, those things are possible, and those things could get lost in if you're trying to make a case of, because you're right. We've all been obsessed with they promised us this, which could just be a communication error.
Yeah, and that the one part that I think makes the NHL look really bad. So they admitted, oh yeah, this has been discussed, but nothing was promised. So that's where they're at now. When they first came back and said, nope, he's not telling the truth. He's wrong. Now they're like, well, these things were discussed, and we'll look into it, and we'll continue to look into it. And now we're currently surveying all the teams to figure out what percentage of people are vaccinated. Like, you're just now looking at that? Like, how are you not getting like a fucking daily report on how many people are getting vaccinated? Like, I know exactly how many people are vaccinated in my office. You know, like, how's that not? I don't get it. It just seems like the single most important factor for you to ensure that you complete the season and that you can have some fans in arenas without jeopardizing the safety of your players is vaccinations. And you have no fucking idea what's going on with vaccinations in your league.
This sounds like Major League Baseball. What are we talking about? This is the NHL? What's going on?
Hey, can we close with something that's close to Adam's heart, and also I think I have an interesting clip from law enforcement in Florida. So, Adam, can you set this up? I actually have the video, but for the UFC event this weekend, it is this weekend, right? Jacksonville. Did Governor Ron DeSantis, as we call him, Riverboat Ron, roll the dice with COVID? Did Riverboat Ron and Dana White basically do a victory lap in front of the crowd today?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna start. I'm gonna watch the whole thing when I'm done here. I haven't got to it. But yeah, COVID is defeated. We're all back to normal. And by the way, if you get a ticket to UFC this weekend, which I want to ask these guys about, if you get a ticket, it's like the most comprehensive disclaimer of all time. That's basically like, hey, you're on your own. You want to come to this event, you know what you're getting into. You're coming into a full arena. It's going to be a COVID haven. But enjoy yourself, but don't look at us when you're done. But COVID's over. We're celebrating it. We win. We were the ones that had it right the whole time. Dana White, Ron DeSantis, we beat COVID, and we didn't back down to it. But by the way, you're all getting it if you come into this arena on Saturday, and don't hold us responsible for it. I may have been paraphrasing.
I'm going to play the video here in a second because it was pretty funny. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that at this point, are Florida's numbers worse than Nevada's numbers? Nope. Are they worse than?
Have you had 35,000 people die in Nevada?
Percentage-wise,
per capita.
Per capita, we're right there. We're right there with everybody. Right there with Colorado too. My brother lives in Colorado. Colorado's slightly better than Nevada. Nevada's slightly better than Florida, but there's no real measurable difference. And from Nevada, am I going to cast stones at what's happening in Florida? I've been down the strip. I've seen what we've allowed in here. So, we can call them Riverboat Run all we want, but we're happily accepting all comers to the strip right now. And they have half the restaurants are closed. They got nowhere to go. We have arenas of UFC every block right now on the strip in Vegas every weekend. So I'm not judging.
That's outside.
Not bullshit. Go inside. It's like that inside too.
All right, ready? Here's Dana White, eventually Governor Ron DeSantis. I will not call him Riverboat Ron in front of Justin ever again.
I told you we would be first. I told you that we would figure out a way to get through this. But to do that, we had to have a place to go. Florida was the leader in getting things open, bringing back sports. You name it. These guys have been very good to us, and we couldn't have done it without the state. There's a lot of people to thank, but let me start with Governor DeSantis, Mayor Curry of Jacksonville, the Executive Director of the Florida State Boxing Commission, Patrick Cunningham, we could not have done it without these guys. They were key to everything, getting things back, getting sports back, but definitely have been key to getting the UFC here. So when we came out here and we did the first show with no fans, I told them, listen, When this thing opens back up and you're ready for fans, we'll come back and we will repay Jacksonville for this favor you did for us. So here we are. I'm going to turn it over to Governor DeSantis.
All right. Thank you, Dana. Welcome to Florida. For those of you who don't live here, we're happy to be hosting this. Very early on in this COVID, that we were told 15 days we needed to slow the spread. The athletics stopped, all the leagues stopped. And then we got a couple more weeks into it. It was like, wait a minute, are we ever going to do anything again? And Dana White was the one guy that was like, we're fighting. We're going to find a way to do it. And I told Dana, I said, you come to Florida, we will make it happen. And UFC last May was the first sport back with live competition anywhere in the country. And we appreciated it being here. Obviously, thank Mayor Curry for Jacksonville being willing to do it. But, you know, we didn't have the big fans for it yet. And
So there you go. That's one of the clips.
And can I stop right here and say, I was there at this event he was talking about, and it was a fucking shit show, and multiple people got COVID. Yep. That is absolutely true. I was there. I witnessed it. I saw it. And who knows who they went back and infected. And to the people who are just fucking clueless, and Justin, sorry, I'm not calling you out. Yeah, Florida's numbers are great. Rebecca Jones. That's all you got to say. Like, look it up. Like, she called it out. She's like, we're hiding all the numbers. Look what's going on here. Like, please look at this. This is not real numbers. We're hiding them. Like, that's what happened. Yes, their numbers look fine if you hide them. If you don't admit what's going on, the numbers are going to look great. And Florida's. I've said this before. UFC put together like a 50-page list of protocols that they were going to follow, that they were going to have to follow to do events. I went to that event, those 3 events in Florida. I went to those events. It was as I said, a fucking shit show. It was awful. Nobody was following protocols. It was out of control. And if you remember, somebody got it, a fighter, and was mingling with all the other fighters, which they weren't supposed to be doing. And it got exactly. And it was crazy. And then they came to Nevada, and Nevada's commission was like, no. You have to follow these. You wrote the protocols. You have to follow them. And it was much better. There were still issues, but it was followed much, much better because they actually made them stick to it. Florida's government was like, do whatever the fuck you want. I was there. I witnessed it. It was out of control. So, I mean, this whole like victory lap of like, you came to Florida and look what happened. It was great. Like, no, it fucking wasn't. It was nuts. I just wanted to say that part of it because you rushed back. Great job. Good work. It was a mess.
Dan, what do you think of this? Because Justin gave his take short of. What do you think of, hey, UFC did go there. They were the first sport back. They've held a lot of events, and they're back there, and they're now masks are optional, and that's a big celebration. Hey, we did it right. Florida says fuck you to the rest of the country.
Fine patriots to be celebrated. Fine Americans.
What like have you? I don't know if you guys have seen the disclaimers on the tickets, which are it's absolutely out of control. What people are buying? How does that just stand? Can you just put on the ticket? Like, no, hey,
no, I will say this. I will say this. I went to Florida twice during the pandemic. I didn't go to like UFC events, but I didn't see. To me, it was no different than Colorado, as far as the restaurants, getting gas, going to the grocery store. I went to Tampa. I was in Tampa. I was in Fort Lauderdale. Well, the one airport was pretty scary, but for the most part, it was no different. It was a lot different than Nebraska, for example, where you felt guilty wearing a mask. There was a sign at the gas station that said "masks not required." And you felt guilty wearing a mask. So I did not have any bad experiences in Florida. We were very careful. So I don't know that they were. I don't care for Ron DeSantis all that much, but I don't know what was going on with the USC stuff. But I don't like to get into, I'm not supposed to get into politics anyway, but I never felt unsafe in Florida in the two or three trips that I made there in the last year.
Well, I mean,
yeah, I was just down there for Walt Disney World for spring break, and similar experience. I didn't. It's funny that you say that about Nebraska. In the early stages of the pandemic, my wife was going through chemotherapy, and I took my kids to my brother's house in Denver to stay for a month. And when I went, that was it was May, I believe, end of May, mid-May. And when I crossed that border into Colorado, it was like there was no masks. Everybody was packed, and I was like, holy shit, like this is scary. And I felt that exact same way. I felt like I was the only asshole wearing a mask in the whole state, and I've been back since then, and it changed. That was like an early on stage, and it changed. But
when you went from Nevada into Colorado,
well, they're not bordering, but
from Utah or whatever.
Right. I came down through the south through the reservations in New Mexico, and it was, New Mexico and on the reservations, they were actually super enforcing of the mask. And then when I got into Colorado, it was like YOLO, like
not to Denver yet. Not to Denver.
It was. I'm telling you, this is early on, but like, like at that point, Nevada didn't have restaurants open, and Denver did. And you could just see all the patios were full, and whatever. It was just scary at the time, but it changed. But I went back a month later.
There's different areas like where Warren Boebert's hanging out, and metro area. I'm just saying, maybe but yeah, if it was very early, then maybe it was different.
Boebert territory is where you cross in from Utah. I know that. That's a good time. And by the way, I also like to know what state actually locked down. Tell me one state that locked down. I would like to know that. For the people that are saying that in the chat, never happened. Like Australia locked the fuck down. Like New Zealand locked the fuck down.
If you got to pick one, it's Hawaii.
Okay.
Hawaii is really fucking close to have been locked down, and their numbers are by far the best. Of course, their numbers are the best.
Of course they are.
And it's not even close. Like whoever's second is not nowhere in the same stratosphere as Hawaii. I think New York did as much of a lockdown as you possibly can with that kind of metropolitan area to deal with. I've got family in New York City, and they did not leave apartments for a long time. So, but I agree. When I went to Florida, everybody was wearing a mask. It was not an issue. Nobody was busting balls. Nobody was hating on people for wearing a mask. I didn't see any. What's that?
I took some shit for it.
Oh, did you?
Sure.
Well,
sure.
Again, I was going to Disney World, which is all tourists too.
Right.
So it's not like I was hanging with Floridians. I was hanging with a whole bunch of other people who wanted to get the hell out of their state and take a vacation.
But I would, and the other question I have, because a lot of people are saying lockdowns are political, masks are political, and you're just fucking ignorant. I would like to know why did New Zealand and Australia, and I've said this, I went to Mexico twice. To Cabo and to Cancun, and it was much stricter than it was in Nevada. And so I will say, why were those foreign countries manipulating our election with their political masks and lockdowns? I don't understand that. I've never understood it, and somebody's gonna have to explain that. It was all about fixing our election. So why were these other countries doing it?
I don't think they mean to say that the masks are being promoted as political. What they mean to say is become controversial on political lines, and people don't want to talk about masks because they don't want to be in a political debate. They don't want to hear the anti-maskers. They want to hear about the super pro triple maskers. I was all for Fauci, but when he's getting vaccinated and then saying 2 and 3 masks are still preferred, and you still shouldn't go do all these things even though you're vaccinated, it's like, well, then why the fuck is anybody going to get vaccinated? You've got to give some people some hope, and that's just not going to do it. And
we know why it is, because people are fucking obnoxious, and they'll be like, I'm vaccinated, I don't have to wear a mask. And now you're putting the burden on businesses to try to enforce it, which is completely unfair to them, which is why you have to keep saying this.
But I would also check your numbers on Mexico. They've found that their numbers are through the fucking roof.
Oh yeah,
And they
No,
were
no, no.
it's real
No, I
bad
know.
there.
But I mean, I'm saying in tourist areas and stuff, they were definitely because they didn't want it to spread. Yeah, of course. In a lot of parts of the country, sure. Yeah, I'm sure. Mexico City is like the most densely populated place in the world. It's almost impossible to try to prevent spread in that way. But like when you go to places where there's tourists and things like that, like they were absolutely enforcing it everywhere, and it wasn't like people were getting upset about it. It was like, okay, yeah, cool. This is what you have to do, and we're cool for it. So. I don't know. I just the people that say it was a political stunt. It was all about the election. Like, no, the fuck it wasn't. Like, why are all these other countries doing it? You have to explain that. And if you can't, then just shut the fuck up.
See, we spent all this time talking about vaccinations and this, and no food talk tonight, man. Now I'm bummed.
Sorry.
I had one comment about grilled cheese or something. That was it.
Oh, Dan, I was going to talk to you too about that because I took the elk meat. I found some elk steaks and I decided to go carne asada style with some marinade. And so I was wondering if you had your own, carne. If you ever do carne asada style with your meats, because it's worked really good with slightly gamey elk. I have.
Oh, okay.
And it worked good in the tacos. And if anybody's got carne asada recipes or something along those lines, I'm down to try them out because I'm literally Google searching and trying it and then marinating for a couple hours and throwing it on.
I don't. I think Adam, don't you have a good carne asada recipe?
Yeah, tacos El Gordo, right on the script. It's awesome. Very highly recommended.
All the tacos I made the other day were better than tacos El Gordo. I'm going to say because elk meat is leaner than chicken, and so therefore you're having the healthiest of options, but it tastes like beef. So the carne asada was great.
Interesting. I'm enjoying it, but I got nothing. I have no concept of how to respond to that. Steve makes things.
Steve makes things.
You're muted, Steve.
I do. I made a steak tonight. It was good. Dan, what'd you do with your,
was in the air? What's that?
No. I threw it on the barbecue on a what's it called, cast iron pan. So I tried to get it super hot. So it wasn't bad. Didn't get enough sear, not to my liking. What'd you do with the giant haul of meat? Looked like you were supplying the rest of the year in terms of meat. Have you started cooking that down?
Yeah. So I actually cooked pretty much for every show on the station yesterday. I was filling in. So Nick Ferguson, who played for the Broncos and the Texans, now he puts in orders when he knows I'm filling in. I have to feed like his entire family. So I fed, Schlereth and Columbus, and so I fed everybody. But man, it's brutal here. Like the weather is just 7 months now. Are we gonna have any nice weather in Colorado this year? It's crazy. So it was like cold. I have to get up like 4 a.m. when I do those big cooks. It was cold yesterday. But yeah, we had sausage. I did turkey, corned beef. I did corned beef again, and brisket, burn ends, all that stuff. Steve, I think you saw it. I had some nice juicy brisket that was just the juices pouring out of it.
You know what? I was still looking. I looked at it with a fine tooth comb, and I was like, "That actually is juicy." God damn it!
Yeah,
it was nice. I was rooting against it. I want because if people missed it, Justin, were you on the night that I put out the super dry, like freaking chalky looking brisket, and everyone's like, Dan, just going at Dan, like it's a fake picture. He didn't. I mean, it's a real picture, but he didn't make that. So
yeah. So yeah, and then I fed all the shows and everything, so it was a big topic all throughout the station.
Well, I know locally that Justin, when you're ready, when we can get it cleared to do a little cooking deal, so we're getting a little echo. That Mark McMillan's on board. Probably a couple months from now, but we'll do something big for the listeners.
I love it. Yep.
What about the restaurant, Justin?
Oh no!
Son of a bitch! I almost made it the whole time.
I will say without naming it, I was in. This is not going to do anything. I was in Southern California, and I almost.
Did you go?
I almost stopped in to try it, but I did not.
You
I
should
know, I
have.
should.
Well, unfortunately, because I fucking dragged my feet for as long as I did, pursuant
No.
to California law, they have to do this renewal process. So I'm on a 60-day hold. There's nothing I can do. They can't sign up any new franchisees for 60 days. So we're stuck in that, which is actually, it's fine. So yeah, Dan did beat you to the punch. So Brady, no,
Well, I hope Brady responsible for this whole renewal deal. If Brady had, had a little more accountability in this whole process, maybe this would have happened. So
Nice.
come on,
fair.
Brady.
That's totally fair. So we have 9 weeks off, Brady. You don't have to ask for 9 weeks.
I'm sure that'll happen.
Do you know how many locations it has?
Yes, I do.
I was just trying to give hints for people.
No.
It has 15 locations, and
Oh, wow.
I will be developing 3 in the Las Vegas area. I could say that.
So that'll be 18.
3.
total.
Wow, big shots.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't go
Either
for one.
Yeah.
He's not a one restaurant guy.
I'm not any restaurant guy. I'm just like
We are.
I'm just the
Many-
starter. I'm the
We are.
catalyst, and then I let it go.
Dan's ready to
Will-
come down to Vegas, do radio, be an executive chef, maybe join Battleborn Injury Lawyers, maybe be a judge down here.
You know what I was going to do when I was working with you guys was bring Chipotle to, because you guys didn't have it at that time when I was working with you, Steve.
Oh, really?
And I had, because we just had one property enough that I could have, actually maybe got enough money together. And I tried and I tried, and they finally just sent me a note. They're like, listen, buddy, we have enough. Whenever we want to do that, we got it covered.
Yeah,
Have a
yeah.
nice day. I'm like,
Screw off, small fry. Nice.
yeah. So it's like, this would be the greatest thing, because all you guys had was like Baja Fresh. I'm like, this is nothing compared to Chipotle on the Strip. Are you kidding me? I could have been rich, but
Well,
I would not call it fast casual, Brady.
No.
I would call it in the brew house.
Oh,
Whoa.
I'm ending this. We're out of here. Thanks for watching.